Rocket Company, present arms!
Merci, monsieur.
Vive Lafayette!
Merci les soldats. Bonjour à vous tous. Bonjour.
His name is General Lafayette. To welcome him, I've asked Mr. Honorable Samuel Hoare to provide his remarks. Now, just so you know that Mr. Hoare is the fourth generation of the original Sam Hoare who recognized and welcomed Lafayette in 1824.
The inhabitants of Concord, by this delegation, welcome you, General, to their village. We thank you for affording us an opportunity here to offer our humble tribute of gratitude for services, long since rendered, but still held in lively recollection. You, sir, now behold the spot on which the first forcible resistance was made to a system of measures calculated to deprive the whole people of these states of the privileges of freemen. You approved this resistance. A just estimate of the value of rational liberty led you, disinterested, to participate with strangers in the toils, the privations, and the dangers of an arduous contest. From the 19th day of April, 1775, here noted in blood, to the memorable day in Yorktown, your heart and your sword were with us. 10 millions of grateful people now enjoy the fruits of this struggle. We can but repeat to you, sir, the cordial, affectionate, respectful welcome offered you at your arrival on our shores, and which we are assured will be reiterated whenever you move on American ground.
Thank you, monsieur. Merci, monsieur le juge. It brings me great joy and happiness to find myself once again among the patriotic citizens of Massachusetts. Absolument, oui. The active part you played in our revolution and the scores and sufferings which you endured, I am very well familiar with indeed. And so to be thus warmly welcomed is cause for great joy and satisfaction. I am further cheered by the fact that I am so able, so early in my return to America, to visit scenes where events so memorable occurred. For it was here in Concord that some of the first shots were fired, which would become the signal for American and universal freedom. My obligations to the United States far outweigh any merit that I might plausibly claim. They date from a time when I had the good fortune to be adopted as a young soldier, a favored son of your country, and they have been continued to me over many decades of affection and confidence. Well may I stand firm and proud when in your name I can be said to have remained ever faithful to those American principles of liberty, equality, and true social order, the devotion to which, as it has been from my earliest youth, so it shall be until my latest breath. Mesdames et messieurs, je vous souhaite tous et toutes une très agréable continuation de votre journée. I wish you all a very pleasant continuation of your day, and I thank you from the bottom of my anciently affectionate heart for the welcome that I have received. Merci beaucoup à vous tous. Merci.
Now we have a representative from the Daughters of the American Revolution to lay a wreath.
Rocket Company, attention! Present arms!
Merci, madame. Merci, you are very kind.
She has welcomed General Lafayette to our country. Let me read a letter, if I may, that also welcomes the General. Washington, February 7th, 1824. To General Lafayette, my dear sir, I wrote you about a fortnight ago a letter which I forwarded to New York in care of Mr. Brown, in which I intimated my desire at Liberty Case you felt yourself to visit the United States, to send a frigate to some port in France to receive and bring you over. Since then, Congress has passed a resolution to that effect, expression of our affectionate attachment of the whole nation to you, and their desire to see you again among us. The period at which you may deem it proper to accept this invitation is left to yourself, but you may be assured that whenever it may comfort you with your views, of which be immediately ordered to, by which we will have goodness to advise me, a public ship shall immediately be ordered to a port that you may designate, to carry you to the country of your adoption in early life. And which has cherished the most grateful recollections of your important services. I send you here a copy of the resolution and have only to add the assurance of my high consideration and affectionate regard. James Monroe, President of the United States. We now ask you, as a considered guests, to join us in this First Parish Church, in the meeting house, for more of our program for the day. And I believe the Concord Minutemen will escort us in.
Rocket Company, attention!
Company, to the right of now. Hey! Make ready! Present! I'm so glad to have you here today for this really important day. As I said, I hope it's an opportunity for learning, opportunity for engagement, and lots of opportunities to have some fun as we think about Lafayette and what he was as a person, as a character, as a symbol, and as a movement that still resides with us today. Our first speaker is Robert A. Gross. Bob Gross is a sparkling icon, a sparkling gem in Concord. He has brought the rich history of the founding of our country and to the developments of our nation to life. His book, The Minutemen and Their World, received the Bancroft Prize on American History soon after it was published. We have a new and revised edition of this book, and it enjoys many things for us to learn as part of the 250th anniversary and the beginning of our war for independence. His book, The Transcendentalism and Their World, was chosen by the Wall Street Journal as one of the best 10 books in 2021, and it covers 1824. Bob is an icon in the world of social and cultural history of the United States, and from the Revolutionary War to the Civil War. And this includes 1824, when Lafayette visited Concord. He has taught at the Amherst College, the College of William and Mary, and was a visiting professor at Brandeis and Brown universities. Before he retired, he was a James and Shirley Draper Professor of Early American History and chair of the department at the University of Connecticut. Bob is a trustee of the Concord Museum and is on the History Advisory Expert Panel of the Wright Tavern. He and his wife, Anne, have lived in Concord since 2014, but most importantly, he is with us today. So let me welcome Bob Gross, someone who is a true educator, storyteller, scholar, and a good friend.
Hand me the mic.
Right there.
Oh, there we are. Okay. Well, good afternoon. And welcome, Citoyen Lafayette. I hope you enjoy your visit to this town and prolong it beyond the time you spend in Lexington. I think I'm going to be giving you an account of Concord and celebrations that may inspire you, I hope, to cast off the glow of nostalgia for the warmth of learning, the lamp of enlightenment. So we're showing a couple slides to start. The first from the Doolittle print to give you a sense of what Concord Center looked like from the burial hill. You can still see the mill pond in the center of town. It hadn't yet been drained and paved over. And the second is an image of Concord Center in 1839. And you're looking at the center from in front of the Colonial Inn, looking east. And you can see, in some ways, how much of a village had really taken shape in a form that we now recognize. So these are really to give you just a sense of what kind of site you would have been in had you been here to greet Lafayette in 1824. So let me start. In January 1824, when he invited the Marquis de Lafayette to return to the United States as the nation's guest, President James Monroe was seeking to perpetuate a legacy. At age 65, the Virginian was the last veteran of the Revolutionary War to serve as president. Lafayette, 8 months older at 66, was the last surviving general of the Continental Army, still beloved as a comrade in arms and adopted son of George Washington. Together, the two elderly leaders represented a revolutionary generation soon to disappear from the historical stage. Would their sons and grandsons be true to the values for which those old soldiers had stood and fought? As he approached the final year of his second term in office, Monroe reflected on the future of the American Republic. The nation had grown from 3 to 10 million people, including 1.75 million enslaved. It had expanded west beyond the Appalachians to the Mississippi River, from 13 to 24 states. And it had overcome the bitter partisan divisions over the Second War with Britain and entered an era of good feelings under his presidency. As the United States approached its jubilee in 1826, Monroe hoped to witness a celebration of national unity and a rededication to Republican self-government. In the person of Lafayette, touring the country, the American people would enjoy numerous opportunities to pay tribute to the founding fathers and mothers and prove themselves worthy heirs to a legacy that was, in fact, already being tested under the strain of accelerating social and economic change. Civic rituals can serve more than one purpose, and they don't always go as planned. Sometimes the mics don't work, sometimes the lighting, and then there can be other problems. So it was with Concord's reception of Lafayette 200 years ago. Outwardly, the record is testimony to the unity of the town and professing gratitude to the Frenchmen and devotion to the ideal of liberty they held in common. Behind the scenes, the documents tell a different story, which I'm afraid is at variance with the theme of unity promoted by the farewell tour. The reception on September 2nd, 1824, did not just reveal tensions and disputes beneath the surface. It anticipated a future of party politics and social conflicts that would explode a decade later to the shock of the local guardians of the Republican tradition. The memory of the Lafayette celebration became a weapon in the popular politics of Jacksonian democracy in Concord. The visit to Concord came early in Lafayette's year-long progress across the country, which took him to all 24 states. After sailing into New York Harbor on August 15, 1824, accompanied by his secretary, Auguste Levasseur, and his son, named for George Washington, he paused for a few days to enjoy his hero's welcome in New York City before racing off to Massachusetts, where he had promised to attend the annual commencement of Harvard College, then celebrated as a public holiday. Lafayette mania swept up the Boston area. A crowd of 100,000 in the city was estimated to have enjoyed an immense military and civic parade in his honor. In Cambridge, he heard the graduating valedictorian, Edward Bliss Emerson, brother of Waldo, give an oration on the advancement of the age. And he was officially greeted by Professor Edward Everett in his speech so eloquent, it launched a major political career. His sojourn in the capital lasted a week, with a side trip to the North Shore. On September 2nd, he was on the road again, headed back to New York. Lexington and Concord lay along the route. By my count, here was the 20th stop. The twin battlefields where the Revolutionary War got its start might seem obvious places for the old soldier to visit. But it evidently took some lobbying to secure the choice. While Lafayette stayed in Boston, he received visitors, and a delegation from Concord came calling. It included a descendant of Major John Buttrick, bearing the musket that supposedly killed the first British regular at the North Bridge. And it was an object of admiration and wonder. It sealed the deal. Concord was on the itinerary. How to welcome a living legend. How to do justice to a hero of two worlds, America and France, in the cause of liberty. And how to put your community forward in the best possible light. Conventional wisdom held that ingratitude is the common vice of republics, though it could have said teenagers. Common wisdom and conventional held that ingratitude is the common vice of republics, that the people are too selfish and petty to acknowledge the sacrifices made by virtuous leaders on their behalf. The reception of Lafayette would be a test of the character of Concord citizens. Would they be up to the challenge? Concord had little time, less than a week, to plan its reception. Not enough to allow for a special town meeting to endorse and fund the event. Nor did it have much experience holding patriotic pageants. April 1824 marked the first time Concord had observed the anniversary of the famous battle since the year after it happened. The 4th of July had been noticed more often, but that holiday was seldom a shared experience. During the height of their partisan conflict, Federalists and Republicans held competing celebrations. Despite this record, the preparations for Lafayette's visit went forward, with a 15-member committee of local notables stepping forward to organize a welcome that they hoped would be, and I'm quoting, calculated to make a fine impression on the mind of the stranger hero. Stranger is not a characterization. It meant foreign, of the foreign hero. There was no playbook for a public reception, but Concord did not have to look far for a model. Every stop in Lafayette's tour was covered in the press. If the town imitated another, who would complain? No premium attached to originality. Communities competed to be bigger and better rather than different. Was there a military cavalcade to escort Lafayette's coach into the town? Check. Did a military salute herald his arrival with 13 guns for the original colonies, 24 for the Republic in 1824? Check. Church bells rang, military bands played. School children paraded before the general, assurance that his name would go down to posterity. Top officials offered words of welcome, followed by Lafayette's warm and gracious welcome. The celebrants enjoyed drinks and delicacies. The general was stuffed to the gills. And everywhere, aging veterans of the Revolutionary War pressed to meet the confidant of Washington and the valiant officer at Brandywine and Yorktown. The Concord program followed the script. At 5 p.m. on September 2nd, a cavalcade of 40 gentlemen, headed by the Honorable John Keyes, the most powerful politician in town, met the general's party at the Lexington border with Lincoln. It was, recalled Keyes' son, the first and only time I ever saw him on horseback. As the procession neared Concord, artillery scouts fired a 13-gun salute to announce his arrival. With drums beating and fife playing, 5 military companies escorted the party to the town square amid a crescendo of sounds, the blast of cannon, a 24-gun salute, the ringing of the village bell, the cheers of the waiting crowd. In front of the meeting house stood an open tent decorated with flowers and evergreens, inside which the ladies of the town had set an elaborate table with refreshments for the distinguished guests. The first time, the local newspaper boasted, that women have come forward to share the honor of preparing a welcome for the Companion of Washington, a claim by women for a place in the public sphere, albeit a conventional gendered one. A large sign proclaimed the day, and you can imagine it like this. In 1775, the people of Concord met the enemies of liberty, all caps, liberty. In 1824, they welcomed the bold asserter of the rights of man, Lafayette. Standing before the bower, the selectmen offered greetings before turning the ceremony over to Squire Samuel Hoare, a distinguished lawyer and the principal political rival of Keyes. The squire, whom we welcome back today, had been a prominent Federalist, occasionally competing for a seat in the state Senate against Keyes, the Republican boss of Middlesex County. But the partisan divisions, which lasted in Concord longer than in most places, had finally dissolved. After April 1824, Concord gave up the perpetual contest for power and joined the era of good feelings. In this spirit of unity, Hoare was given the closing speech to match Keyes' performance at the day's start. You, sir, now behold the spot on which the first forcible resistance was made to a system of measures calculated to deprive the whole people of these states of the privileges of freemen. Perhaps Marquis Lafayette noticed that they were not the rights of men, but the privileges of freemen. This was the conventional wisdom in Concord, which Lafayette graciously received. Then the guests, the officials, the ladies, and the committee retired into the bower for the repast. Afterwards, a select group of Revolutionary veterans was invited to meet the Frenchman and shake his hand. As the sun set, the official party took its leave, accompanied by the cavalry of Stowe, the next destination. Altogether, Lafayette spent no more than 2 hours in Concord. The memory of that visit would long endure. The reception of Lafayette was a great success. The townspeople had done themselves proud in displaying gratitude to the benefactor of the Republic. So you would think from the account in the Concord Gazette and Middlesex Yeoman. Great credit is due to the people for the order and harmony that prevailed, the editors judged. The reception was a moral and intellectual treat to all, such a one as here never before was witnessed and cannot ever be expected again. Concord's reception of Lafayette thus appears similar to other places. It was marked by the coming together of citizens and a united display of gratitude. But it is sound advice not to believe everything you read in the newspaper. Sometime in the following November, an anonymous handbill circulated in town telling a different story. Addressed to the inhabitants of Concord and emblazoned with an emblem of equality in caps, it denounced the committee of arrangements for the favoritism it had shown in deciding who was allowed to meet Lafayette and who was not. With little awareness of how its, and this is a quote, prejudice and caprice would look, the organizers ushered the A-list into the bower, where the upper crust enjoyed drinks and treats with the French general. Everybody else had to glimpse the festivities from behind the ropes that cordoned off the tent, which was patrolled by soldiers with bayonets who took seriously their job as bouncers. A chorus of discontent rose from the dense crowd. In their eagerness to see Lafayette, many inhabitants pressed against the barriers. The guards pushed back. Tempers flared. Some people began to complain aloud at the exclusion. Although they were not as well dressed or as educated in society as those within, they complained. Their fathers had served the country. Some had fought with Lafayette in the battles of the Revolution, and they were as grateful for his services as those inside. Luckily, the town escaped a riot. Lafayette's party took no notice of the disturbance. The outrage boiled over after the organizers of the reception, oblivious to their neighbors' hurt feelings, asked the town meeting to cover their costs, which amounted to $80, about $2,600 and $3 for the ample refreshments of wine, coffee, and tea, and fancy cakes. It was just such arrogance that prompted the unknown authors of the handbill to go public with their complaints about the self-serving conduct of the Arrangements Committee. The persons who were for excluding their neighbors from joining in and making ready the ceremonies, they wryly observed, were now not so very anxious to exclude the same neighbors from paying the bill. The statement clearly expressed the common feeling. Town meeting dismissed the request for reimbursement. The privileged could party at their own expense. If the Lafayette reception was a test of Concord's character, it exposed the conflicted community, simmering with personal jealousies and social resentments against the local elite. But the critics were ambivalent. The reception was fine, they conceded, except that so few were allowed to share in it. The military parade itself stirred pride. There was no point in carrying their complaints to excess and publicizing the town's inequities to the wider world. It concerns everyone to have the matter rightly understood in this town's mind, said the handbill. And beyond the town of Concord, let not these things be told. But the bitter memory of the occasion did not go away. In 1835, the town planned a celebration of its 200th birthday, and the local elite pushed hard for a grand affair, including a banquet at $1.50 per person. A burden for very many, it was said, and an impossibility for some. Once again, the aristocrats were going to display their own personal consequence and have another frolic at the expense of the farmers and mechanics whom they despise, complained a writer to the Concord Freeman, the new populist organ in town. Deriding the affair as another Lafayette celebration, the newspaper ignored it almost entirely, even Ralph Waldo Emerson's official address. Fortunately, the Whig newspaper, the Yeoman's Gazette, covered the event in full. The Lafayette reception did not just set townsmen against townsmen. It also soured relations between Concord and its neighbors. When Samuel Hoare proclaimed Concord the first site of forcible resistance, he was saying nothing new to his proud fellow citizens. But the people of Lexington deemed the remark an insult to their forefathers' courage and their town's honor. How dare Concord claim credit for having raised the first standard of an armed opposition to the unjust and tyrannical measures of the mother country? That glory belonged rightly to Lexington, whose militiamen did not tamely suffer the unprovoked assault of the king's troops, but returned fire in self-defense. On their village green, not at the North Bridge, the Revolutionary War commenced. Determined to prove its case, Lexington held a special town meeting and authorized a committee of leading men to collect depositions from surviving witnesses. By April 19, 1825, that body had published a vindication of its brave and patriotic townsmen. In turn, the competing claims were fought out in the press. Concord mocked little Lexington's bid to convert a massacre into a battle. Lexington answered with jibes at Concord's caprice, which reflected the vanity of what was then the larger, richer town. Compare median house prices today, you'll get a different story. In 1827, Concord's aged minister, Ezra Ripley, with the help of fellow citizens, published a competing narrative, buttressed with new depositions, to reaffirm his town's primacy in the annals of the Revolution. Ironically, Lafayette's party accepted Concord's version of events. The General's secretary, Levasseur, kept a careful account of the stops on the tour, however brief. In Lexington, the guests passed under a beautiful arch of evergreens and flowers with an attached motto that read, "Welcome, friend of America, to the birthplace of American liberty." Then they paid their respects to the first martyrs in that cause at the obelisk Lexington had erected on the town common in 1799, 38 years before Concord raised its own monument. Here, Lexington insisted, was the spot on which the first blood was shed in the cause of American independence. But the visitors took away a different message than their hosts intended. It will be remembered, Levasseur reminded readers of his published account, that in 1775, a number of peasants were assassinated on the spot in Lexington by an English battalion. Lexington's fallen were victims, not fighters, in contrast to the men of Concord who fired the first shots. As it would happen, advocates for Acton would soon blast their mother town for hogging the credit. Concord supplied the place, and Acton the men. That quip expressed the smaller town's resentment well into the 20th century. Despite these disputes, the Lafayette reception was unforgettable. At age 7, little David Henry Thoreau witnessed the celebration and could still recall it decades later. John Shepherd Keyes, heir to his father's political dynasty, was only a toddler in 1824. As a man in his 80s, he remembered being in the bower with his mother and holding her hand as the gallant Marquis patted him on the head. Happily, he had only a dim recollection of nearly being trampled by the 4 gray horses drawing the general's coach. A quick-witted sister pulled him out of the way. To meet, even just to see and cheer the hero from a distance, was a great privilege. Concord native Edward Jarvis, who grew up in the Wright Tavern, was awed by the glimpse he got of Lafayette entering Boston. "I never had seen such a crowd, nor a man of whom some had spoken so much," the Harvard junior wrote in his diary. "So I gazed eagerly and was gratified." Mary Moody Emerson, Waldo's witty aunt and muse, delighted in her encounter with Lafayette in Portland, Maine. On being introduced to the general, she described herself as a veteran of the Concord fight. On that memorable day, she too was in arms, an 8-month-old held tightly by her anxious mother, looking out on the battlefield from inside the old manse. The people of Concord may have soured on one another at times, but they never soured on Lafayette. Eventually, they forgot entirely about the Lafayette scrape. On September 12, 1930, the town combined its annual birthday party, the 295th, with the celebration of the tercentenary of Massachusetts as an English settlement. The festivities centered on the first parish, Green and Rite Tavern, as they are today. And they were more lavish than ever. On that day, the Concord Antiquarian Society held its annual reception and tea in the new quarters at the intersection of Cambridge Turnpike and Lexington Road. The holiday was also highlighted by an unlikely event, a reenactment of Lafayette's visit to Concord, which the organizers mistakenly attributed to 1825, not 24. The program then was an entirely local affair. No American Friends of Lafayette yet existed to sponsor a national tour. A subcommittee of Concord's Tercentenary Committee oversaw the details. Lafayette's coach rode from the Antiquarian House to the church green as if it had come from Lexington. The vintage vehicle and 4 horses were loaned from Sudbury's Wayside Inn, which was acquired in 1923 and preserved by, of all people, auto manufacturer Henry Ford, who had done so much to drive horse-drawn coaches out of business. The coach stopped opposite Rite Tavern, and from it emerged 3 passengers. Lafayette, in a real French uniform, circa 1825, his son, and his secretary. All were impersonated by residents of Concord. The church bell rang, the crowd cheered, and presumably the nation's guest once again made brief remarks. The Boston Globe, which covered the event, didn't say, nor did the town committee explain why it included Lafayette's visit in the ceremonies. This was not an occasion for a history lecture, unlike today. Not when 1,000 people dressed in old-time costumes. Now when 1,000 people dressed in old-time costumes were waiting to dance the Virginia Reel to an orchestra on the green. The reenactment simply attested to Concord's storied past. Perhaps it's enough to know that the chairwoman of the organizing committee was Grace B. Keyes, granddaughter of the town father who had played so prominent a part in the original event. What then does this review of Lafayette's celebrations teach us? If nothing else, that historical commemorations can bring people together or set them apart, and that the struggle for an inclusive democratic community is ongoing and never settled. The Tercentenary Commission's history was flawed, not only in the details of Lafayette's visit, but also in the markers that erected around town. But will we do any better? In our efforts to rectify past errors, we will undoubtedly commit new ones to be corrected in turn. For now, let us all thank Lafayette for paying us a visit and reminding us that we affirm community in our struggles to find a common history. Thank you.
I love to listen to Bob because he brings a lot of the dryness of history into like humor and stories that you go, yeah, I could see myself there, or that's a unique twist. Look at it. You know, it's amazing the body of knowledge that's inside that guy's head and how he shares it with us. I just feel blessed. Next speaker is Jennifer Turner. We have a treat. Jen Turner, you can come on up, is the executive director of the Robbins House in Concord. The Robbins House is Concord's primary museum for the African American history and is a symbol of courage and diversity in this town. Before arriving in Concord, Jen spent her professional life exploring and talking about the meaning of history in non-traditional settings, such as town squares, on board the Mayflower II, in living history and in house museums and in the conference rooms of local towns. She now spends her days learning and helping others to learn about the rich history of the occupants of the Robbins House and their profound impact on the development of Concord and beyond. Today, she's going to paint us a brief portrait of Lafayette and his role in the anti-slavery movement of the 19th century. So let us welcome Jen Turner, an advocate, a communicator, a new tenant in the Right Tavern, and guess what? A real friend to our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. First Parish and the Right Tavern have been wonderful partners with the Robbins House over the last year and a half since I arrived in town to my dream job. So it's wonderful to be with you here today to commemorate the arrival of Lafayette and Concord in 1824. As Tom mentioned, I am the director of the Robbins House, and we tell the lived experience of African Americans who lived and worked in Concord throughout the 19th century, particularly through the lens of the Robbins and Garrison families. On Lafayette's last visit to the United States in 1824, he would spend more than a year traveling to all 24 states then in the US. And everywhere he went in his farewell tour, Lafayette was met with an outpouring of affection from American society. Thousands turned out to see him at every stop, and he was regaled with parades, balls, dinners, and toasts in his honor. So today, before we talk about Lafayette and his views on abolition, I want us to spend a few minutes thinking of what this day might have been like in 1824 for the Robbins and Garrison families. And I want us to take a moment to think about how these families might have viewed this event in the very white spaces that existed in Concord in the time period. While many of us think of the Robbins House only in the context of where it currently sits at 320 Monument Street, 200 years ago, it resided out in the Great Field. The Great Field was a neighborhood that was the home of several families of African American and Indigenous descent in the town. Peter Robbins had purchased the Robbins House, a 544 square foot home and 13 acres of farmland where he grew rye and cranberries, just the year before Lafayette's grand tour arrived in Concord. The deed of the home in 1823 stipulated that Peter and his wife Fatima would live on one side of the home, and Peter's sister Susan Garrison and her husband Jack would live on the east side of the house with their children, who in 1823 consisted of Susan, Jack, William, and of course, Ellen Garrison. While we most often think of Ellen Garrison in the context of adulthood and the brave action she took as a teacher during Reconstruction in the South, as well as her groundbreaking attempt to desegregate a Baltimore train station in 1866, in 1824, at the time of Lafayette's visit to Concord, she was an 18-month-old toddler. And although she was too young to remember Lafayette's visit, she would not be the only anti-slavery activist in Massachusetts, possibly influenced by a chance sighting of him. More on that later. We don't know where or what the Robbins and Garrison families did during Lafayette's visit in Concord in 1824. Unlike many of the other well-known Concord families of the era that Dr. Gross just spoke about, the Robbins and Garrison families did not leave behind as much primary source material, including letters or diaries that their white contemporaries left behind. But this event in September of 1824 was a significant town-wide and nationwide event. And so it is very likely that the Robins and Garrisons would have been among the throngs of townspeople and thousands of other Americans who came to see the nation's guest, as James Monroe called him. In particular, what might have drawn Peter Robbins and his family to seek out Lafayette was that just 2 years before, in 1822, the patriarch of the family, Caesar Robbins, had died. He was a veteran of 2 world wars, having served as a teenage soldier during the French and Indian War, and again in the American Revolution. He was one of the patriots of color who was at the North Bridge on April 19, 1775, and he served in several campaigns, including at Fort Ticonderoga. It is likely due to his service in the Revolution that Caesar Robbins became self-emancipated and settled in Concord with his family. By 1824, there were dwindling numbers of Revolutionary War veterans still living, but their families likely saw Lafayette's arrival as a way to pay tribute to their military service 50 years before. In fact, Lafayette himself was the only living general from the Continental Army and one of only a handful of Washington's staff still alive at the time of his American visit. The other important aspect of Lafayette's visit to the Black families living here in Concord and elsewhere in the United States was his well-known reputation as an abolitionist and anti-slavery advocate. This was a growing time in the United States when slavery became the dominant and most divisive issue of the antebellum era. In many ways, Lafayette's nostalgic visit served to arouse aspirations of freedom for the 1/6 of Americans enslaved in the United States in this time. As Diane Shaw notes, James Paxton was a Virginia minister who was expelled from his church for his anti-slavery views in 1826, just 2 years after Lafayette's visit. But Paxton noted at the time of Lafayette's visit that the visit, with the excitement it produced from Dan to Bathsheba, with the dinners and the toasts and speeches and balls and processions, and talk about our struggle for liberty and our gratitude to him for espousing our cause, it gave a lesson to our slaves about the worth of liberty and the way to get it, which they will not forget during the present generation. During his time fighting as a young teenager during the American Revolution for the cause of liberty and throughout his lifetime, Lafayette continued to have frank discussions about American slavery with the likes of Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, and George Washington, in which he never missed the occasion to defend the explicit idea that all men, without exception, have the right to liberty. Lafayette's forthright belief, not only in ending slavery, but in championing racial equality, was remarkable for a privileged nobleman in the 18th century, and it put him at odds with most of his white contemporaries. In fact, Lafayette became increasingly ambivalent about his service in the Revolution, precisely because of the irony of the American Republic, that the freedom won by the American colonies against Great Britain came at the expense of the tens of thousands of enslaved persons, providing the labor that gave generational wealth to the enslaver class in the Southern and New England colonies in the time. Thomas Clarkson, who was one of the most prominent English abolitionists, said that Lafayette often told him, "I would never have drawn my sword in the cause of liberty if I could have conceived that thereby I was founding a land of slavery." And although it is not precisely clear when Lafayette became an advocate for emancipation, it is clear that his time in the American colonies during the Revolutionary War influenced his views on slavery and abolition. During his time in the war, Lafayette became acquainted with an enslaved soldier named James Armistead, who volunteered to serve during the siege of Richmond in 1781. Later that year, Lafayette paid Armistead to spy on British General George Cornwallis by posing as a fugitive or escaped slave. The information Armistead gathered was invaluable to both the American and French forces in their planning for the last major offensive of the war at Yorktown, and contributed to the victory. After the war, Lafayette, with deep appreciation for Armistead's service, helped him win his freedom. Lafayette wrote a testimonial about James's service during the Revolution, certifying that James has done essential services to me while I had the honor to command this state, Virginia. His intelligences from the enemy's camp were industriously collected and faithfully delivered. He appears to me entitled to every reward his situation can admit of. Lafayette was instrumental in helping James win his freedom from the Virginia General Assembly in 1787. And in tribute to the Marquis, James adopted the surname Lafayette, which he used for the rest of his life. By the end of the negotiated peace between England and the United States in 1783, Lafayette embarked on another idea to further the cause of abolition and racial equality on a larger scale. Lafayette made the decision to purchase 2 plantations in the French colony of Cayenne off the coast of South America in present-day French Guiana, with the idea of implementing gradual emancipation for the enslaved workers. He outlawed whippings, granted more leisure time for enslaved workers and their families, provided schooling, and most importantly, wages. These efforts, Lafayette believed, would prepare enslaved persons for eventual freedom. In 1784, Lafayette wrote to George Washington expressing his hope that Washington would join his endeavor in Cayenne and that his proposal of delayed manumission would spread to the Caribbean as well. Although Washington declined to join Lafayette in his new enterprise, he commended him for his generous spirit and noble proof of your humanity. And while Washington declined to participate in what might have seemed like a fairly radical plan at the time, he was the only one of the Founding Fathers' generation to free many of his own enslaved persons in his will when he died in 1799. Lafayette undoubtedly helped influence that decision. The Cayenne experiment lasted for several years, and the running of the estates often fell to Lafayette's wife, Adrienne, who corresponded frequently with the estate managers, as Lafayette's attentions were increasingly drawn to the unfolding drama of the French Revolution. When Lafayette was imprisoned in 1792, his freedom experiment failed when his properties were confiscated and the Cayenne blacks were resold as slaves. After the upheavals of the French Revolution, Lafayette returned to France in 1799 and began to follow once again the anti-slavery movements in England, France, and the United States. In 1807, Lafayette commented to Thomas Jefferson how happy he was when the slave trade was abolished by the United States government. Lafayette and Jefferson had differing views on slavery, although both understood the contradictions inherent in a democratic republic with the institution. And Lafayette was appalled when Jefferson wrote to him in 1820, expressing his willingness to let slavery extend into states newly admitted to the Union after the passage of the Missouri Compromise. Lafayette responded to Jefferson's letter by writing this: "Was it not for that deplorable circumstance of slavery in the southern states, not a word could be objected when we present American doctrines and constitutions as an example to old Europe." It has also been suggested by several American scholars that Lafayette's visit to the United States in 1824 may have contributed to the escalation of the anti-slavery movement in the late 1820s, primarily by underscoring the hypocrisy of a nation founded in freedom that still kept 1/6 of its people enslaved. Interestingly, as the anti-slavery movement gained momentum in the United States, both Black and white abolitionists used Lafayette as an inspiration for decades. Black abolitionists in particular described Lafayette, often in direct contrast to Washington and Jefferson, as a champion of equal rights. An example of this is a well-known figure in both Boston and Concord, and that's Lewis Hayden. In 1824, Lewis Hayden was 10 years old, and enslaved in Lexington, Kentucky. On Lafayette's tour of the South, Lewis Hayden met Lafayette very briefly, but it was a life-changing experience for him. Describing the event more than 70 years later in an essay on his early life, Hayden wrote that he dated his hatred of slavery from that day, and that he allowed no moving thing on the face of the earth to stand between me and my freedom. Hayden and his wife, Harriet, settled in Boston, and they became leading figures in the anti-slavery movement. Hayden was an organizer of the Boston's Underground Railroad, and he helped in 1851 to rescue Shadrach Minkins, secret him out of Boston, and bring him to the safety of Concord for a few hours' safe stop on his long journey to freedom in Canada. In 1855, Lewis Hayden helped desegregate public schools throughout Massachusetts, and he became one of the first Black men elected to the state legislature. Lafayette continued to be a symbol of hope for Lewis Hayden and other 19th century abolitionists, both here in Massachusetts and around the North. His life and work helped to inspire those individuals committed to ending the scourge of slavery in the United States and around the world. And although Lafayette's prestige may have faded over time, it is important that we are here today to think about his legacy. Next spring, Concord will be celebrating another anniversary, the 200th anniversary of the Battle of Lexington and Concord. And it is in the spirit of Lafayette that we should think about whose stories we will help tell next year. Lafayette never forgot the fundamental meaning of the American Revolution, and he urged venerated American leaders like George Washington to move towards realizing a more perfect union. Although American society at the time might have minimized and forgotten James Armistead, Lafayette never did. And so it's incumbent on us today to continue to tell difficult history, to wrestle with the contradictions so prevalent in American history, and to tell fuller stories of all the people who helped build this nation. By doing this, we create a more meaningful and inclusive view of the American past for us today and for all the generations ahead. Thank you.
You know, Jim, one thing I love about you is that you've helped us to understand Lafayette in a richer, more core of what this country stands for, the liberty and the justice for all, that Lafayette brought and continued to reinforce that. And sometimes people think of Lafayette and the Revolutionary War and winning in battles and all that stuff, but really, there was a much deeper person here who had a profound influence on our society, both then and it carries through to today. So thank you for bringing that to us. So I'm looking for Sam Williams. Is he here? Where are you? Ah, there he is. Oh, excellent. Okay. What if I didn't see him? Okay, let me tell you about Sam Williams. It's our next speaker. You're in for a treat, folks. So Sam has been instrumental in various initiatives across the city of Boston, including prison rehabilitation, the reentry impact and racial profiling, community economic development, urban planning, youth development, and public safety. He is currently the chair of the Community Advisory Board for Northeastern University's Institute for Race and Justice. Mr. Williams is a former member of the Board of Directors of the Action for Boston's Community Development, ABCD, an appointed member of the Executive Office of the Public Safety, Massachusetts Racial Profiling Task Force. He is also a poet, a writer, a trainer, a guest, and guess what? he's a good friend of the Right Tavern and First Parish. So come on up.
And what Tom didn't mention is I'm here in the embodiment and spirit of Lafayette. 200 years later. And so I was asked to take poetry and weave it into a contemporary message. And it was interesting as I was listening to Bob speak, you'll hear some elements of that handbill that he talked about and the reception. And we didn't coordinate this. Honestly, there was no coordination. But I wrote this in the spirit of what I thought Lafayette's last message would be to Concord. And I was asked to write it in an ode, but I don't know if this is an ode, so I just put it together in the creative spirit of the message that I wanted to leave with you all. So I'll read the thing that I wrote to you. And I have copies of these. So before you leave, make sure you get a copy if you want to take it with you. And we have a little exercise after this that we thought would be a tribute to maybe capturing today and all of the great messages that we heard. So let me read this to you all. It goes, Concordians, our past and present are entwined in many ways. It's why the shots fired in 1775 are still being heard today. When I visited in 1824, you welcomed me like a parent would their son. Now I must share these words with you to reflect on the times to come. I hold a deep kinship with the town of Concord in my heart. Although the 24 stops of my tour continues to shorten my days, there's no real victory in democracy without human rights. Without we, the people, there's no sign of true community life. If there's a thirst to quench in the odes of our contemporary time, it would be to tear down every prison wall and institutional design. Then we can heal the land and recycle the miles of barbed wire fence and create new structures so that the whole town of Concord can shine. Opening pathways of freedom ensures humanity never falls, because the internal revolution starts with an inner call. The Right Tavern and the First Parish are still vibrantly standing tall. But to preserve the wooden planks, we must read all of the writings on the wall. Words like virtue, integrity, tolerance can't be thrown around in the air, nor can a cultural narrative be worn as a decorative cloth or covering shawl. Many were overlooked back then, and many are still being overlooked now. We must first heal ourselves and then show other communities how. There's wisdom in every circle and even small crowds. Emerson, Thoreau, Ellen Garrison made this community proud. To eliminate human indignities, it takes a lot of collective work. Every individual in this town should be honored for their worth. To be the best of the best, our social justice knowledge must persist. We can only do this by transforming the hate that separates the human race. We can't be freedom fighters who are persuaded or get tricked. This is why I hold on to the memories of this special place. Beyond this contemporary ode, there's an important story to be told. in our September 22nd, 2024 time capsule exercise, all of this should unfold. We must archive the past events and new stories of our current times. It's a simple strategy for preparing the young and honoring the old. I bid you farewell, my beloved Concordians. I must end my stay. I'm trusting you to answer the new challenges of modern time. Each of us in this audience today have an important role to play. We can be catalysts for this community or creators of a new social walls. Thank you. So, Shelley, we're gonna pass out, I think, some cue cards and some pens. And we have a time capsule box that Shelley has in her hand. And the thought is to capture, like, what you heard today, what we know to have been things that happened over the last year, 2 years, 5 years. And as we mentioned earlier, there are many more great celebrations ahead. And so this exercise, we're asking you, I'm going to throw this poem in it, right? And I don't know when Shelley and Tom and the team will open this thing back up, right? But my contribution is this poem. They asked me to write it, so I'm going to throw it in. But the thought is to really think about everything that was said today from all of the many voices that shared the spirit of this town, both in history and in cultural day-to-day activities, and what you might hope to be the possibilities for the future, for the children, right? What messages and ideas and symbols and things you want the children to capture and hold on to, because many years from now, maybe 200 years from now, the children will be in our seats today, and some of us might not be here. I'm hoping to still be here. I want to do this one more time before I leave. And again, the exercise is an invitation, and so the cue cards are being passed around. We should have passed around the poems too. I have them right there on the chair if someone wants to grab them and pass them around. They're right there in that big box. And if you, for whatever reason, don't get one, I have a little stash that I can break out. It's over at the CPO office. Spirit in the air when I was thinking about this poem. So, as I mentioned, it's, again, fun exercise. It's an invitation to capture moments, things that, we know we have this major event in November, right, this big national election that we're hoping to have a favorable outcome in one direction or another, right? So there's a lot going on publicly, socially, culturally, both in the town and in our country, and would want you to just think about if you were to put a contribution into that time capsule, what would you want someone 2 years from now, 3 years from now, 4 years from now to actually understand about these times? This event is a monumental event that I think those who aren't here would be probably excited and inspired to understand how this all came together. So should I transition?
When they finish, they should pass it to the end.
Okay, so, and when you finish your contributions, I think you can pass it to the end. We'll try to capture them before you leave. And then I think Tom and Shelley will tell you when we will open back up the time capsule. Right? So thank you all, appreciate you all.
Thank you. You know, when people talk and you listen to what they have to say, it comes in your ears, you think about it, it processes. When somebody reads a poem that they wrote, it doesn't just come into your ears, it comes into your heart and into your soul. It's one of those things that sinks in. And so, Sam, what you said today, I think, sunk into me, and I think many of us that are here today. So thank you very much. Next, and last, but boy, this is going to be fun. Anderson Manuel, read a little about him, is a multifaceted individual, seamlessly blending between roles as an educator, a husband, a father, a writer, a musician, and a whole lot more. With a lifelong passion for music, he began singing at the tender age of 2. His deep connection to music has evolved into a desire to share its transformative power with others, utilizing it as a unifying force. Anderson is a devoted member of the Unitarian congregation for over 2 decades, First Parish and the Unitarian Universally. He has embraced a leadership role in this community and passionately guides our youth groups, worship services here and throughout the Boston area. Anderson will guide us now through a series of musical selections, most fitting for this occasion. As we consider the life of Lafayette, let us experience in songs Anderson will share with us. Anderson is a profound educator, guide, musician, and guess what? A deep friend of this community.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anderson.
Hello, everyone. Are you guys ready to do some singing? So first of all, before we start to sing, I'm very mad at these 2 gentlemen that were up here. They did not tell me. Look how dapper those guys look. Are you serious? Nobody told me that I was supposed to be, you know. I looked at him, I'm like, and this gentleman followed, and look at this gentleman. I think I would look dapper in one of those suits. But I did not get the memo. So first of all, I just wanted to let you guys know it was in my heart, so I have to share it with you. No. So thank you so much for being here. So one of the cool things about this is that as I was getting myself ready to participate in this celebration, as a person of color, I didn't know anything about James Armistead. So I had to go and I went and educate myself. I went and did research on this amazing man. He was a black man. He was born into slavery. He risked his life to fight for freedom and justice, but I've never heard of him. But I am so happy today because I made sure that my two boys know of him. They're in colleges right now. I said, guys, we got to find out about this guy. And then as an elementary teacher, I do teach first grade, my kids are going to know not only about Lafayette, but they're going to know about this gentleman who also fought, who also gave up his freedom so that, so that we can be freed from the British. So his story is a powerful reminder of the courage and resilience of those who have struggled against injustice. So do not take what you've learned today and make sure that you share it and also educate yourself, which is what I did. So I just wanted to mention that because I learned something from this whole experience also. So I'm so grateful for that. So, ladies and gentlemen, are you guys ready to do some singing? So I'm going to, you can be my, you want to be my, okay. So I'm going to teach you a little song. And all these songs are about people who encourage us to not to stand and on the side, but also to get involved. To get involved into making our country the place that everyone feels welcome. Isn't that what we want? I said, isn't that what we want? All right. So if you are ready, I want to teach you a little song. It goes a little something like this. You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Okay, so you guys are going to be singing with me. Let's try it. We're gonna go slowly and then we're gonna pick up the pace, okay? We gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Now, okay, so we're gonna pick up the pace. We gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with... Now your turn. One foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. So now we're gonna do a little something called a call and response. I'm gonna say something, you're gonna sing it back to me, and then we're gonna go back to the chorus. All right, are you ready? Don't give up hope. You're not alone. Don't you give up. Keep moving on. Now back to the chorus. You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and live. Lift up your eyes. Don't you despair. Look up ahead. The path is there. You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. You gotta put one foot in front of the other. Put one foot in front of the other, and I know you're scared, and I'm scared too, but here I am, right next to you. Oh, we gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put lead with love. Now you're gonna bring it down now at the end. And lead with love. So, see? I told you guys. He feels really bad for me. Thank you. So, when you hear all these messages happening around, when you turn on the news and you hear all that stuff that is going on, we'll call them noise. Just go to your bathroom, lock the door. I drive my family crazy, because that's what I do. I'm like, I've got to put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. I gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. So sing this little song to remind you that things are gonna get better. All right. So the next song we are going to sing together is a little song that I'm sure a lot of you guys know. It's called Get Up, Stand Up, Stand Up for Your Right. Get up, stand up. Stand up for your right. Get up, stand up. Stand up for your right. Get up, stand up. Don't give up the fight. Preacher man, don't tell me heaven is under the earth. I know you don't know what life is really worth. It's not all that glitter and gold, and half the story has never been told. You gotta see the light, say, stand up for your right. Come on now, get up, stand up. Come on now, now. Get up, stand up. Stand up for your right. We gotta get up, stand up. Stand up for your right. Get up, stand up. Don't give up the fight. Open up your eyes and see our world in pain. You've got to hear the cries and feel the human strain. Hate's a fire that's burning bright and deep. Let compassion be the water that makes the anger sleep. Let's get up and stand up for our right. Come on, get up, stand up. Yeah, yeah, get up. I can hear you now. Stand up, get up now. One more time. Get up, stand up. Stand up for your right. Get up, stand up. Don't give up the fight. Let us rise up and unite with hearts that's pure and true. Let us spread love like wildfire, showing a different you. Break down the barriers, let the kindness lead the way. Together we'll conquer hate and make it a brighter day. Come on, come on. Get up, stand up. We're gonna get up. Don't give up the fight now. Get up, get up. Stand up now. Get up, stand up. Don't give up the fight. Do not give up the fight. You gotta go talk to your neighbors. And you gotta tell them that we want a better future for our children. And we want a better future where we will see the hue that this country definitely demonstrates. So get up, stand up, fight for your right, encourage your friends to go out there and vote. So, one of the songs That really means a lot to me, and this song was a very powerful song during the civil rights movement. I was not around back then. But when I went to college, I took all of the civil rights classes, and I learned about this song, and I got to learn this song. And I'm sure some of you guys have heard it. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up to freedom land. Join me now. Ain't gonna let justice, ain't gonna let injustice turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. I ain't gonna let injustice turn me around. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up to freedom land. Now we have a guy who's trying to cause division amongst us. You know what we're gonna say to him? What are we gonna say to him? Ain't gonna let division turn us around, turn us around, turn us around. Ain't gonna let division turn us around. We're gonna keep on marching up to freedom land. Last but not least, ain't gonna let segregation turn me around, turn me around. Turn me around. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up to freedom land. Now finally, so how am I gonna get you guys to remember all this song so that when you are, you can watch this video, and then if you want to remember these songs, watch the video on YouTube, because our church has their own video, so that you'll be able to sing these songs. Because when I'm sad, guess what I do? First of all, I bang some weights. That's the first thing I do. And second, I just sing. Sing has a way to purify my spirit and my soul, and also it reminds me to keep on going, keep on fighting, because we need to do better for our children of tomorrow. So the last song we're gonna sit together now. We're going to sing together. It's a song called We're Gonna Sit at the Welcome Table. We're gonna sit at the welcome table. We're gonna sit at the welcome table one of these days, hallelujah. We're gonna sit at the welcome table. Gonna sit at the welcome table one of these days. All kind of people are around that table. All kinds of people around that table one of these days, hallelujah. All kind of people around that table. All kind of stars at the welcome table one of these days. Last one, gonna sit. We're gonna sit at the welcome table. We're gonna sit now. We're gonna sit at the welcome table one of these days, hallelujah. We're gonna sit at the welcome table. Gonna sit at the welcome table one of these days. We're gonna sit at the welcome table one of these days. That is the message of Lafayette. That's what he wanted. He wanted everyone to join at the welcome table. And that's what we need to fight for, because I believe that one day it is going to happen. So let's keep on fighting. One day we will unite as one. So have a wonderful afternoon, and thank you so much for singing with me. You guys were a wonderful audience. Thank you.
Wow. So as we bring this session to a close, it's not over. We would like to invite you to the Wright Tavern. We have a caterer who's set up a reception with drinks and light snacks and lots of good conversations. It's an opportunity for you to see the Wright Tavern if you've not been inside, learn about its history and its importance to our society, to our history, to our culture, to the things that have happened in our community. And also, you have a chance to see what we're working on, because this is clearly a work in process. We're not finished. We have actually just begun, which means that we also need any support that you all might be willing to share with us. The Wright Tavern Legacy Trust has been set up as a separate 501(c) organization that has leased the Wright Tavern from First Parish. We have a great relationship, obviously. And what we are doing is building it to bring it back to what I like to sometimes say, take its rightful place in telling the stories of Concord's history and the founding of our country. This, with the Wright Tavern, will be a gathering place, a place for us to learn, to experience, and hopefully someday to share refreshments. That's also in the plan. So it'll be a tavern. So as I look at this picture of Lafayette, and I look at our guest Lafayette, you haven't changed much in 200 years. But we encourage you to come to the Wright Tavern, stay as long as you like, and probably at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock we'll throw you out. But until then, come enjoy the company of the people here, talk about your experiences, have an opportunity to converse with our General Lafayette and other members. And somebody once asked me, as a way of closing, so what's next? Well, it just so happens that on October 11th, we are hosting the 250th anniversary of the first Massachusetts Provincial Congress. Now, this is something Bob Gross has written a lot about, and he will be a featured speaker along with 3 other incredible speakers, and it'll be a full day of engagement and learning about the founding of our country, the founding of democracy. The theme of the session is about exploring democracy. And what does it mean? How has it evolved over time in our country? Where is it now? What do we need to do to preserve it and enrich it for the future? We are inviting students to come with their teachers. We're having educators. We're having you all to be there to engage in conversations, to learn about democracy, and to see it in action. So that will be happening here on October 11th, and we encourage you to put it on your calendar and to join us. You can see more information about this on our website at wrighttavern.org. But in the meantime, it's just something that we can take and remember today, and what the importance of today and our guest, Lafayette. So I encourage you to come to the Wright Tavern, and thank you for coming. I want to mention one quick thing. That's a coin, if you will. That's a medallion. We actually have that in the Wright Tavern. One side of it is Lafayette, and on the other side is George Washington. And it was minted in 1824, the actual coin. We have some other, remember, from a good friend of our Wright Tavern has loaned us a couple of items. There's a nice book for sale you might be interested in. We'll hear about when you get over there. But once again, I want to thank you for coming, and thank you for this event. And Monsieur Lafayette, thank you for coming. And have a good evening.